Karen's eyes narrowed as she threw the bucket of dirty water, thinking it was just some nobody. But her smug grin instantly vanished when the target turned around. It was the mayor's sister, Amanda. The color drained from Karen's face as she realized the gravity of her mistake. This was no longer just a petty feud between neighbors. It was about to become a full-blown political scandal that would shake the town to its core. Amanda stood there, stunned, as the filthy water dripped down her designer dress. The initial shock quickly gave way to a simmering rage. "Do you have any idea who I am?" she demanded, her voice quivering with indignation. Karen's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. She had always disliked Amanda, the perpetually perfect politician's sister, but she never imagined her juvenile prank would lead to this. "I'm the mayor's sister, you imbecile." Amanda spat, her manicured fingers balling into fists. "Do you have any idea the kind of trouble you're in?" I didn't know," Karen stammered, her bravado suddenly evaporating. "It was just a what?" "A bit of harmless fun." Amanda interrupted, her eyes narrowing to slits. "You have no idea the forces you've just unleashed." She whipped out her phone, fingers flying across the screen. Karen's heart pounded in her chest as she realized Amanda was calling the mayor himself. This was spiraling out of control quickly. "Hello, brother." "Yes, it's Amanda. I'm standing here, drenched in filth, thanks to your neighbor, Karen." Amanda paused, listening to the mayor's response. "Absolutely. I'll wait right here for the police." Karen felt the blood drain from her face. The police? This was going to be so much worse than a simple petty feud between neighbors. Her mind raced, searching for a way to salvage the situation, but each avenue seemed more hopeless than the last. As the sound of sirens filled the air, Karen knew her life was about to change forever. She had made a grave mistake in underestimating the power of the mayor's sister. Now, she would have to face the consequences, no matter how steep the price. The police arrived in a matter of minutes, their sirens blaring and lights flashing. Karen stood frozen, her mind racing with panic as two officers approached Amanda, who was still dripping wet and glaring daggers at her neighbor. "Ma'am, what seems to be the problem here?" one of the officers asked, his gaze shifting between the two women. "Officer, this woman just assaulted me," Amanda stated matter-of-factly, her voice laced with indignation. "She's the neighbor I've been having issues with, and she just threw a bucket of dirty water all over me. I demand she be arrested immediately." The officers turned to Karen, who was struggling to find the right words. "I didn't mean to. It was an accident, I swear," she pleaded, her voice shaking. "An accident," Amanda scoffed, her eyes narrowing. "I find that very hard to believe. This was a deliberate attack, and I want her charged to the fullest extent of the law." The officers exchanged a glance, then one of them stepped forward, his expression stern. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with us down to the station." He reached for his handcuffs, and Karen felt her heart sink. "But you don't understand," she cried, her eyes darting between the officers and Amanda's triumphant expression. "I'm not some random neighbor, I'm—" "Save it for the station," the officer interrupted, firmly grasping her arm and leading her toward the patrol car. Karen's mind raced, desperately searching for a way to defuse the situation. But the overwhelming sense of dread and helplessness was too much to bear. As she was shoved into the back seat of the police car, Karen knew her life had just been turned upside down. The mayor's sister had the power to crush her, and she had no idea how she was going to get out of this mess. The ride to the police station was a blur of panic and desperation for Karen. Her mind raced with possible explanations, apologies, and pleas for leniency, but she knew the odds were stacked against her. As the familiar brick building came into view, her stomach twisted with dread. Once inside, Karen was led to a small, sterile interrogation room, where she was left alone to stew in her own anxiety. The minutes ticked by like hours as she wrung her hands, trying to come up with a coherent plan. But every time she thought she had a solution, it slipped through her fingers. Finally, the door opened, and in walked Amanda, accompanied by a stern-faced police officer. "Well, well, if it isn't the town troublemaker," Amanda drawled, a smug grin spreading across her face. "I have to say, I'm quite impressed. It takes a special kind of stupidity to throw dirty water on the mayor's sister." Karen opened her mouth to speak, but the officer raised a hand, silencing her. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you some questions. This is a serious matter, and we need to get to the bottom of it." Karen nodded mutely, her heart pounding in her ears. "Now, Ms. Winters," the officer began, consulting a notepad, "can you tell me exactly what happened this afternoon?" Karen took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. I didn't mean to do it," she stammered. "It was just a stupid prank, a joke between neighbors, and I had no idea who she was." The officer raised an eyebrow, his expression unreadable. "A joke, you say? Well, Ms. Winters, I can assure you that the mayor's sister does not find this particularly amusing." He turned to Amanda, who was watching the proceedings with a predatory gleam in her eyes. "Ma'am, do you have anything to add?" Amanda leaned forward, her gaze boring into Karen's. "Oh, I have plenty to add," she purred. "This woman has been a thorn in my side for years, and now she's gone too far. I'd want her charged with assault, destruction of property, and whatever else you can throw at her." Karen felt the blood drain from her face. She had known Amanda was trouble, but she had never imagined the depths of her vindictiveness. Now, it seemed, she was trapped in a web of her own making, with no way out. As the interrogation continued, Karen's sense of dread only grew. The officer's questions were relentless, and Amanda's malicious glee was palpable. She felt like a cornered animal, with no way to escape the impending doom. "Ms. Winters, I'm going to have to ask you again. Was this a deliberate attack, or was it truly an accident, as you claim?" the officer asked, his tone slightly softer than before. Karen's mind raced, searching for the right words, the right explanation. "I swear, it was an accident," she pleaded, her voice trembling. I was upset, and I wasn't thinking, and I just reacted without realizing who she was." Amanda scoffed, rolling her eyes dramatically. "Oh, please. Do you really expect us to believe that? This was a calculated attack, and you know it." The officer held up a hand, silencing Amanda. "Ma'am, I understand you're upset, but I need to hear Ms. Winters' side of the story." Karen seized the opportunity, leaning forward in her chair. "Officer, you have to believe me. I would never intentionally do something like this to the mayor's sister. I'm just a regular person, trying to live my life. I had no idea who she was, I swear." The officer regarded her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "Ms. Winters, I want to believe you, I really do. But the fact remains that you did throw a bucket of dirty water on a prominent member of this community. That's a serious offense, and it's going to require some serious consequences." Karen felt her heart sink. She knew in that moment that no matter what she said, the outcome was going to be bleak. Amanda had the power, the connections, and the ruthlessness to make her life a living hell. As the officer continued to question her, Karen felt a growing sense of resignation. She had made a terrible mistake, and now she was going to have to pay the price. Whatever happened next, she knew her life would never be the same. The interrogation dragged on, with the officer methodically working through the details of the incident. Karen could feel the weight of Amanda's unwavering gaze, her icy stare piercing through her like a dagger. "So let me get this straight," the officer said, his brow furrowed in concentration. "You're telling me that you had no idea this woman was the mayor's sister when you threw the bucket of dirty water on her?" Karen nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, that's right. I was upset, and I reacted without thinking. I swear I had no idea who she was." Amanda scoffed, shaking her head in disgust. "Unbelievable." You really expect us to believe that this was all just a silly misunderstanding? The officer held up a hand, silencing Amanda's outburst. Ma'am, I understand you're frustrated, but let's let Ms. Winters finish her statement. Karen took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. Officer, I know this looks bad, and I'm not trying to make excuses. But I can honestly say that I had no idea who she was. I was having a bad day, and I let my emotions get the better of me. I never meant to cause any harm, I swear. The officer studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. I believe you, Ms. Winters, but the fact remains that you did cause significant harm to a prominent member of this community, and I'm afraid there are going to be consequences. Karen felt her heart sink. She knew what was coming next, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Ma'am, I'm going to have to place you under arrest, the officer said, his voice tinged with regret. You're facing charges of assault, destruction of property, and disorderly conduct. I'm afraid you're going to have to come with me. As the officer moved to cuff her wrists, Karen felt a wave of panic wash over her. This was it. The moment her life had completely unraveled. And all because of one stupid, thoughtless act. As she was led out of the interrogation room, she could feel Amanda's triumphant gaze burning into her back. It was a stark reminder that she was now at the mercy of the mayor's sister, a fate that filled her with a deep, sinking dread. The ride to the county jail was a blur of panic and despair for Karen. Her mind raced with 1,000 different thoughts and scenarios, each one more terrifying than the last. She had never been in trouble with the law before, and the reality of her situation was slowly sinking in. As the police car pulled into the jail's parking lot, Karen's stomach churned with dread. She was escorted inside, the sterile atmosphere and the sound of clanging metal doors only serving to heighten her anxiety. Once inside, she was processed, her belongings confiscated, and she was given a thin, scratchy blanket and a worn mattress to sleep on. The reality of her predicament hit her like a freight train, and she felt the walls closing in around her. Alone in her cell, Karen finally allowed the tears to fall. She had never felt so powerless, so completely at the mercy of forces beyond her control. The thought of Amanda's smug satisfaction only made the situation more unbearable. Hours turned into days, and Karen's despair only deepened. She had no idea how long she would be forced to remain in this place, or what her fate would ultimately be. The uncertainty was maddening, and she found herself grasping at any glimmer of hope, no matter how faint. One day, as she was staring listlessly at the bare walls of her cell, the sound of a commotion outside caught her attention. Suddenly, the door to her cell swung open, and a familiar face appeared. Karen Winters, the officer said, a hint of sympathy in his voice. You're being released. Karen's heart raced as she processed the words. Released. But how? Why? The officer hesitated for a moment, then spoke again. It seems the mayor's office has intervened on your behalf. All charges have been dropped. Karen's eyes widened in disbelief. The mayor's office? But how? I'm afraid I don't have all the details, the officer admitted. But you're free to go. Just try to stay out of trouble from now on. All right? As Karen stepped out of the cell, a glimmer of hope began to flicker within her. Perhaps, just maybe, she had a chance to reclaim her life and make things right. But the looming question remained: what had changed, and who was responsible? Karen stepped out of the jail, her mind still reeling from the sudden turn of events. Just hours ago, she had been facing the prospect of a lengthy legal battle and potential jail time. But now she was a free woman. The question of why remained, gnawing at the back of her mind. As she made her way home, Karen couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. Had Amanda orchestrated this? Or was there something else at play? The uncertainty was maddening, and she knew she needed to get to the bottom of it. Upon arriving at her house, Karen was greeted by an unexpected sight. A black sedan parked in her driveway, and a well-dressed man standing by the front door. Her heart raced as she approached, unsure of what to expect. "Ms. Winters," the man said, stepping forward. "My name is Robert Simmons, and I'm the mayor's chief of staff. I understand you've had a rather eventful few days." Karen nodded, her mouth suddenly dry. "Yes, that's an understatement. What's going on? Why was I released?" Simmons cleared his throat, his expression unreadable. "Well, Ms. Winters, it seems the mayor has taken a keen interest in your case. He believes that the charges against you were rather excessive." Karen felt a surge of relief, but also a growing sense of confusion. The mayor? But how? Why would he do that? Simmons gestured toward the house. "Perhaps we could continue this conversation inside. There are a few things I'd like to discuss with you." Reluctantly, Karen led the way, her mind racing with 1,000 different questions. As they stepped into the living room, Simmons turned to her, his expression serious. "Ms. Winters, the mayor has been made aware of your unique situation. He believes that the actions taken against you were unwarranted, and that you've been the victim of an unfortunate misunderstanding." Karen felt a glimmer of hope, but also a deep sense of skepticism. "I'm sorry, but I don't understand. Why would the mayor care about what happened to me?" Simmons paused, his gaze searching her face. "Ms. Winters, the mayor is aware that you are his sister's biological daughter. You're the mayor's niece." Karen felt the ground shift beneath her feet as Simmons' words sank in. The mayor's niece. It was impossible, unthinkable. Yet, the earnest expression on the chief of staff's face left no room for doubt. I don't understand," Karen stammered, her mind racing. "How can that be? My parents are, well, they're my parents. There's no way the mayor could be my uncle." Simmons held up a hand, his expression sympathetic. "I know this must be a shock, Ms. Winters, but the facts are clear. Your birth mother is Amanda, the mayor's sister. She gave you up for adoption many years ago, and your parents raised you as their own." Karen felt a surge of emotions, disbelief, confusion, and a deep sense of betrayal. All this time, she'd been living a life built on lies. Her parents, the people she trusted most, had kept this secret from her. "Why?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why would they do this? Why wouldn't they tell me?" Simmons sighed, his gaze sinking to the floor. "I'm afraid I don't have all the details, Ms. Winters, but the mayor believes that your parents were trying to protect you from the scrutiny and pressure that comes with being part of a prominent political family." Karen felt a surge of bitterness. Protect her? It had only served to trap her in a web of deceit, one that had nearly cost her her freedom. "So what now?" she asked, her eyes narrowed. "The mayor wants to what? Swoop in and claim me as his long-lost niece." Simmons shook his head. "Not at all, Ms. Winters. The mayor simply wants to make amends for the injustice you've suffered. He's instructed me to offer you his sincere apologies, as well as any assistance you may need to move forward." Karen considered this, her mind whirling. On one hand, she wanted nothing to do with the mayor or his family, the very people who had turned her life upside down. But on the other hand, the prospect of having the resources and connections of the mayor's office at her disposal was tempting. Finally, she made her decision. "All right, Mr. Simmons, I'll accept the mayor's apology, but I have one condition. I want nothing to do with him or his sister. This is my life, and I'll live it on my own terms from now on." Simmons nodded, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Understood, Ms. Winters. The mayor will respect your wishes. In the meantime, please let me know if there's anything I can do to help you get your life back on track." As Simmons departed, Karen stood in the middle of her living room, feeling both relieved and deeply unsettled. Her world had been turned upside down, but perhaps, in the midst of the chaos, she'd have found an opportunity to forge her own path. It was a daunting prospect, but one she was determined to embrace.